That's respectable. That's good. That's good. So good afternoon. The Chilliwack Creative Commission is located in the traditional unceded territory of the Stalo people. And live from Studio C, woohoo! Yeah. It's Chilliwack Creative Commission's Creative Third Thursdays. I'm your host, Jeff Edwards. It's one of the best days of the month in my mind. Creative Third Thursday is a chance to connect and build community of creative people starting right here in Chilliwack, BC. Creative Third Thursdays is a regular event at Co-work Chilliwack. And Tim McAlpine, the brains behind this creative space, there he is. Let's take a bite. So on behalf of Tim and Co-work Chilliwack, welcome to Studio C. And for more about Creative Third Thursdays, you go to creativethirdthursdays.com, and tickets are still free. It's a great mixer in the lobby before, as you can see, all kinds of people having a chat with one another, and we make this YouTube video like we're doing right here now. So Creative Third Thursdays is one of the initiatives of the Chilliwack Creative Commission. It's a group of passionate individuals, people who are volunteers, and they work on a number of events around town, including Creative Third Thursday. We're a subcommittee of SEPCO. And for more about us, visit businessinchilliwack.com. So on social media, if you were to share, maybe take a selfie in the studio or something like that, please use our Creative Chilliwack hashtag. All right, are you guys ready? Yeah! Our featured creative this time is a multi-nominated award-winning film director, including Best Short at the Screamfest and British Horror Film Festivals.
After that, I felt like a man made of steel.
Audience choice at the NSI Film Exchange, a Tabloid Witch, an Aloha Accolade, and a Golden Sheaf. His films have been nominated for multiple Leo Awards, have screened at Grauman's Chinese and Egyptian theaters, on HBO, CBC, Super Channel, TMC, Fearnet, Space Channel, Tubi, Hallmark, and in festivals around the world. Along with many other accolades, he has an MFA in film production from the University of British Columbia. We're very fortunate to have this Sardis Secondary graduate join us today. Please welcome Chilliwack creative, Nicholas Humphries.
Hello.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks
so
for
much
having me.
for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody.
So we got to see a little bit of your reel.
Yes.
One of your reels. You have several. We'll talk about that later. But just tell us, what was that fantastical artistic presentation about?
Thank you. So that represents like the first 10 years of my career kind of chasing being a director. And it consists a lot of like horror content, sci-fi, dark fantasy, because that's what I was trying to brand myself as at the time. I really wanted to be Guillermo del Toro. He was sort of my idol for many years, and that's who I wanted to be. So most of my independent projects where, you have to, if you're doing an independent feature, it really was like 5 years of my life for each of those projects. So it had to be something that I really passionately cared about. But one of the things I learned over time, working in the industry, about 10 years in, I started getting hired for a lot of TV movies and stuff that does shoot in Vancouver, where they are hiring Vancouver directors. And so that consists a lot of like Christmas movies, a lot of Christmas movies. I think right now on the DGC production list, there's like 11 Christmas movies shooting.
I heard applause starting out there.
You've got 3 for me coming this year, so I'll let you know where they're.
I'm in one of them.
He's in one of them. That's how we met. Sunny summer romances and thrillers for like Lifetime and stuff like that. And so once I started getting work in those realms, I really kind of changed my tactic to branding myself as not necessarily, that's the only thing I do, but I'm a diverse director that just directs and can work in a variety of mediums with different sizes of budgets and things like that. So there's that reel. I have a rom-com reel. I have an action reel, and it really depends on what the project is that I'm applying for, and then I'll send them that and be like, this is what I do. I do romances really well, and kind of hide that. Yeah. So it really depends like what the gig is.
We talked about some of your awards are really helpful to promote one's career, right? You've got a number of them on your shelf.
I chased a lot of awards as I was kind of rising up as a director because...
What do you mean chase them?
Like submitting, awards cost money to submit to, and then oftentimes you have to like pay for the trophy when you're done to get one. It's a business, I'll say. Because I noticed when I was doing a lot of short films, and everybody kind of starts in short format, that I would send it to a festival, and people would go and they would see it, and maybe I'd get a write up somewhere, and then the buzz had sort of died. And so the other thing that I would start to do is like submit it to different award shows and see if I can get in, and managed to collect a couple of those. And then the thing I did after that was branch out into web series because it's like, I'm showing that I've can do short films, right? And that was great, but that will get you more work doing more short films, right? And I needed to show that I could tell a longer story, and then go to an audience, right? You release it on the internet, it's like anyone that wants to find it can find it, and you can start building numbers that way. And
do you have a YouTube channel?
I do, but when I got an agent, she told me to take most of it, not down, but like to hide a lot of it, because it wasn't the quality benchmark of the stuff that I'm getting paid to do now, because when I was making short films, I didn't have any money. Most of my short films maxed out at about $1,000 budget. Yeah. So I have a couple of things up there, but mostly I use it to showcase like trailers for the movies that I'm doing. But it's not really an active.
What are the budgets now?
The budgets now range from $900,000 to $3 million. It really depends on if it's like an original. So like, let's say Hallmark or something has like an original movie that they're funding. It's usually more in the $3 million range. And then I also do a lot of acquisitions. And so there's a number of companies in town that will develop projects in-house, make them, and then sell them to the networks. But they tend to have lower budgets, near like 900 to 1.2 million.
So last month, Nick was going to be our Creative Third Thursday featured creative. You got hired.
I got a gig. Yeah, I was going to come, and I was looking forward to it. And then, one of the projects that I was kind of chasing came through, and it was my third Christmas movie of the year. This one was a mystery, so it was a little bit different, and it was a sequel to a Christmas movie that the network that I was working for put out last year and did really well for them. So people are waiting for this one, which is like a different kind of pressure. But it turned out really well. I'm super excited about it. I had a great cast and crew, and we had 13 days to shoot that one, which the one that we did was 11 days, which was a tight schedule, but that one's super cute as well. This one just we had a little bit more time.
Let's keep it in perspective. We did. I played a high maintenance customer in his movie, so let's keep it in perspective. I'm just a day part player, really, with the possibility of some principals. I actually have been asked to audition for a few supporting roles, so
great.
I'm moving slowly up the ladder.
Well, you stole that scene, so it's only a matter of time.
So I'm always fascinated when people realize the path they are going to be on. So when did you become cognizant of the fact that you're a filmmaker?
I mean, I was making short films in my backyard as early as like 12 years old, although I'm going to date myself with this, as I was making them on a camcorder that took VHS tapes and editing in camera. Yeah. And then I got to make a little short film in my broadcast media class at Sardis Secondary, which was probably my first kind of first short film that I did with like editing software, which was a really cool experience. All my friends were actors.
Let's do a shout out to the instructor there, because I know he's been responsible for a lot of people that have gone not all the way. George Coton. Yeah. Big shout out to him.
Yeah. When I was like a lousy little teenager, I remember this one day I was just like skipping working on it because there was other things I wanted to do, and he like came out running into the parking lot one day and he was like, "Nick, where are you going? We have to work on your film." So I credit him a lot for kind of keeping me on task at that age. And then I was really kind of lost. I went to college. I went and, went to UBC. I did a film theory degree. So it was like, there was no practical film training. It was theory and history. And then I got a job at the Vancouver Film School working in the writing department. And I had to produce all of the short films that the writers got made at the end of the year. But I had trouble finding directors for some of those scripts. And so I went and directed a short film so that I could just do it and make sure that the student got their money's worth. They had a film made. But the first one I did, I sent to the NSI Film Exchange and got the Audience Choice Award. And there was this light went off in my head where I was like, I know this is going to be really tough. And the odds of me succeeding at this are low. But it was the first time I felt any kind of like this path had opened up, and it was like, I'd rather spend my life chasing a dream and not getting there than to, going and doing something safe that I didn't like, because you could also fail at a safe job, right? So it was like, why don't I try this thing? And so chased it for a lot of years, but just never thought I'd get paid to do it. And it wasn't until the pandemic when there was like this disruptive moment in the industry where, not a lot of people wanted to step onto a film set and put themselves at risk. And I started getting phone calls for TV movies, and went in and I didn't suck, and they kept calling me back. And then people that I met at that company moved on to other companies, and then they started hiring me, and the web kind of like spread out. And now, I'm averaging about 4 movies a year, which, I own my house now. I'm paying my bills doing that. I was able to quit my teaching job and just direct full time. So it's been kind of like this evolving sort of thing over the years. But
take a little, I really want to talk about the job of the movie director, but you mentioned your teaching career, because that was a substantial part of your career at Vancouver
years.
Film School.
Yeah.
So what are your takeaways from that experience?
From that experience, well, I would say if you want to get good at anything, try teaching it, because you have to really think about what you know and explain it to other people in ways that they can hear and understand it. And I was also tasked at one point to rebuild the entire curriculum for students who specialized in directing. And I really, students pay a lot of money to go there, and I wanted to make it worth their time. So I really had to build something that I believed in, and it allowed me to keep working the muscle, right? Like, even though there was like sometimes, a year to 2 years where I hadn't directed anything big, I was constantly on a studio set, like blocking with actors and explaining it to a room full of students about like why we do it the way we do. And so it kept me kind of active, so that, when the opportunity did arise, I was confident stepping onto a set and doing it myself.
Well, that's one of the things that we're proponents of at Creative Third Thursdays, is having a diverse, relatable skill set. Like, that is totally relatable, and it clearly helped you with your ultimate goal of moving into directing. So that's interesting. Can we talk a bit about the job of movie director?
Sure.
What's the first thing you get? First thing you do after the script has come to you?
After the script has come. So the first thing I will do, though, is if my availability has been checked, sometimes the script comes first and they go, are you interested in this?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's an email saying, are you available on these days? And the first thing I'll do is I'll read the script from beginning to end without any interruptions, because that is the only time during the entire process where you get to experience that story as an audience member. Yeah. After I've done that, I go into something called script analysis, where, actors do script analysis as well, but you do it from a director's standpoint, which basically is like, either I use an iPad now, but it used to be, getting the script, getting a couple colored pens, and every single thought that goes through your head about like, oh, maybe I'll adjust an actor this way. Oh, maybe I want this color to be connected to this location. I have questions about this because this line doesn't make sense. So I need to like do more research on what this means. And it basically is just like a brainstorming barf onto the page that you can then organize later on. From there, I think there's usually like a concept meeting where, specifically if you're working with a network, you'll go in with your sort of vision for it and see if it gels with what the network was thinking, and you kind of have to meet in the middle because they're the ones that developed it, they've paid for it. We all have bosses, right? And we just kind of need to get on the same page in that meeting. And then location scouts come up after that. So for the first like week or two in prep, you're just driving, at least in my case, all over the Lower Mainland, like looking at what locations are available. Like, do we like this house? Do we like this street corner? Do we like this shop front? Whatever it might be. And then casting. casting director. At this point, it's usually taped auditions. It used to be we would go and sit in a room and the actor would come in and audition, and I would give them a note, see if they take the note. Sometimes I would say something really crazy and see if they can do something with it, because if they do, it means I can adjust them on the day. If they hesitate or they, don't take the note, then I know that that's probably what I'm going to be facing on the day. But it's usually all taped auditions now. So we'll kind of go through them all, pick like a top 3 for each role, and then submit that to the network, and then they'll go through my selections and pick from there usually.
So at that point, the actors have been pinned.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, and then a bunch more meetings. There's like prop show and tell. We do a tech survey, which for me, I think the tech survey is the most stressful part of the process, because when you're on set, you're really only working on what's in front of you, right? It's like, this is the scene that we're doing. We're concentrating on this scene. I'm working with this actor in this moment. It's not a big kind of crazy thing for your mind to juggle. But during the tech survey, you're going through every single location with all of your keys. So your director of photography, your first AD, your production designer, everybody's there, and you're walking them through the entire movie from beginning to end. And sometimes they have questions and you have to have answers. I don't know is not an answer, right? My trick is I will always say, well, what do you think it should be, right? And then that gets them creatively involved. And then if I don't have the answer, right, that's my go-to. And then you get to set and you're shooting, and it's kind of just like how you see it in the movies, right? It's that you block the scene, you work with the actors to figure out what the movement's going to be, and you keep working on it until it's locked in, and then you work on the shots with the director of photography. I always go in with a shot list, and then I throw the shot list out the moment I step on set, because even though I know what I need to get, I want to know what the director of photography's creative ideas are, because they're just concentrating on their role. So they're going to have better ideas than me. And same with the actors, right? I'll block them and I'll have adjustments for them, but if they have a better idea, I want to know what it is. So I try and create a space where everybody can feel safe to bring their best ideas to the table, and the best idea wins. That's how we get a better movie, because film's a collaborative medium.
It's such a collaborative medium. When you get on set, everybody is like focused on making that thing look the best it possibly can. And it's a really addictive sort of environment to work in, I think. It's just like all these people are all only concerned with what's going to go on that screen. And it's fascinating to be part of and see people like you working in it.
I always get a little emotional every time the first frame is up on the monitor.
Yeah.
After all that prep, everybody's got to kind of come together and assembled this one image, right? All these creative people working on the same thing. And the first time it's up there, I've been doing this for 18 years now. I still get a little tear in my eye every time the first frame goes up. It's pretty magic.
So you're talking about jobs that will last for 13 days or longer sometimes, but mostly around that long. What are you doing in between?
Good question. So up until recently, it was teaching. So I would teach, and then I would use my vacation time to direct, and then I would go back to teaching, which worked out locally, because if I was doing a show in town here, I could teach through prep and through post and just take the 12 to 13 days off the shoot. In the recent years, I've been getting shows in other places. I've been doing movies in like Kelowna, Winnipeg. I got to do a movie in Panama last year. And for that, I have to be gone for like prep and the shoot. And so I wasn't able to keep teaching. I was gone 6 months of the year, basically. And so they couldn't really work around that anymore, unfortunately. So being a full-time director I'm about 1.5 years into it, and I'm still figuring out what that daily routine is. So I spend a lot of time with my dog. I like going to the gym. And then, I'll chase kind of, I'll try and maintain contact with the producers and executives that I've worked with so far. So I keep a list. Anytime I meet someone who might be able to give me a job, I add them to my little Google spreadsheet. And when I have stuff to talk about, I'll reach out and I'll be like, hey, I just finished a Christmas movie. Here's an updated resume. I just did this yesterday. Here's an updated resume. And what are you working on? Hope you're keeping busy. Like, try and make it more about them than it is about like, look at me and give me a job. It's like, how are things with you? Like, let's start a conversation. So So it's a lot of that, and I try and watch movies still, which can be difficult. There's this weird thing where a lot of people that work in film don't tend to watch a lot of film because they don't have time to do it. So I try and do that as much as I can.
What genre-wise do you tend to watch?
Well, I love horror. I love horror movies.
Still?
I still do. Yeah. But it's funny. One of the things that I've found over the years is that I love watching horror movies.
What do you love about it?
I love having like a visceral reaction to
really getting scared.
Yeah. It's a bit addicting. But I've found over time that like as a sustainable way for me to work as a director, the rom-coms, the Christmas movies, like those are easier for me to kind of go in and take a couple days rest and then go in and do another one because horror movies are hard, right? Both in like the way that they're made. There's usually a lot of night shoots. You got things like continuity of blood and stuff to worry about. There's usually stunts and things that are a little bit more draining. Also, I love them so much that my quality benchmark is quite high. When I've done something that I wouldn't get excited about, I find it really draining. Whereas, romance is just like people falling in love. It happens in the day. It's a more sustainable way of working for me, in my opinion. But I still love going back to the scary stuff.
The cool thing about the romance, and now they're moving more into thriller as a genre on movies of the week, aren't they?
Well, fall is thriller time.
Yeah.
Spring and summer is romance time.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the stuff that's going to come up between now and mid-November, things tend to shut down like mid to late November until the new year, will be thrillers, which I'm very excited because I love doing the thrillers. They're fun. You get to like hit people with cars and throw them down the stairs and do all kind of crazy things. So it's a good time.
So when we were talking the other day, you mentioned the creativity gap, and so I thought that quite a fascinating part of our conversation. We do a little pre-interview when we do these things. And so I want to know if you're talking about the difference between the aspiration of being a creative person and the reality of it to people. Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah. This is not mine. This is something that I heard Ira Glass talk about once on This American Life, but it rang true to me. And creativity gap is, all creative people come to an art form because they love it. And because they love it, they tend to have good taste, right? But when we're first starting out, our experience level, the resources that we're working with really support us doing stuff that's kind of here. We all start at the bottom. And the stuff that we love is way up here, right? And as people are kind of, working towards making the stuff that they love, there's a long process in between where we just get this feeling, it's like, we're not making good stuff. Like we just don't feel great about the stuff that we're making. And I would even say most creative people tend to give up because they're like, well, I'm not good at this. I'm not gonna keep doing it. But everybody starts down here. And the only way to bridge that gap is to produce a high volume of work, is to keep practicing it. And eventually you start getting a little bit closer to making the stuff that you love and respect. But it's a tricky thing because you also have to find this balance where you can't be like, well, that thing I made is awesome. Because as soon as you start doing that, you stop growing, right? You stop getting better. You're only going to be as good as you are in that moment. So you have to sort of listen to that voice, but not let it stop you from moving forward. It's the creativity gap.
So you walked Spain's, what is it called? The Santiago de Compostela.
Yeah, Camino de Santiago. I got dragged along on that in my early 20s. And the reason I brought that up in our conversation the other day is that it's really affected sort of how I approach everything in life. I'm not very religious or spiritual, but I got pulled along on this walk, and I don't know if anyone's aware of it, but it's a 500-mile walk across Spain. So we started in the south of France, walked to the coast of Spain. And I remember when we first started, there's this big sign. We made it to the Pyrenees mountain, which was a nightmare. And then there's a sign that said 500 miles to Santiago. And there was this thing in my head that was just like, there's no way we're going to walk this entire way. We're going to like catch a train, like something's going to come up, and I'm not about to walk 500 miles. That's impossible. But we woke up every morning and we walked for 10 hours a day. We put one foot in front of the other, and eventually we got to Santiago. And the reason I bring this up is because it's like I learned two major things through that experience. One is that when we got to Santiago, it was a beautiful city, but we've been walking through beautiful cities the entire time. But the part of that trip that gave me stories to tell was the journey. It was the path to getting there. And so I'm constantly reminding myself to just like look around and enjoy where I am in that moment, because when you're working towards a goal, like, oh, I'm going to be this big, rich director, whatever, it's easy to keep looking at the future and lose track of what's happening along the way. So I've been trying to, really focus on that. And the other thing is that, like, if there was this task that I thought was impossible and all it required me to do is put one foot in front of the other and keep heading in the same direction, what else in my life do I think is impossible that's just going to require the same thing? So I've taken that to my film career. It took me 10 years to get paid to direct. And a lot of people that were starting around the same time as me gave up. Eventually it happened because I just kept heading in the same direction.
You honed your skills.
Yeah. So I think it just takes persistence and focus, and there's nothing else I'd want to do. If I had a plan B, I probably would have gone and done my plan B a long time ago, but it's the only thing I want to do. So I've kept chasing it, and a year ago I got to quit my job, and now I'm doing it full time, and I'm not starving. I own my house, which is, rare for my generation in a place like Vancouver. So,
What's next for you?
What is next? There was a couple of things that I thought I was going to get that didn't come through recently, which, so I'm licking my wounds there. But there's a couple of different projects that are on the way. There's a potential episodic, which may happen before the end of the year, maybe early next year. A couple more TV movies. I now have like 3 or 4 companies in rotation that, tend to call me up when they have something going, but it's wild because sometimes I got 14 hours notice when I went to Panama. They called me and 14 hours later I was on a plane. So usually I'm like very late addition in the game. So I don't know, but that's kind of the exciting part. I'm trying to learn to love that part of it, of not knowing. But something else will come. Yeah.
Is there anything I didn't cover that you wanted me to pick up on in this conversation?
No, I think it's pretty thorough. I think I'll just say real quick that when I was doing my master's at UBC, I had this directing instructor who I really respected, and I was really looking forward to the final session together because we got this one-on-one. And I was like working up to that because I had all these questions about like, how do I go from being this guy that does 0 budget short films to getting paid to do it? And we finally had our meeting and I asked that question and they were like, it's really hard. Like you could get a job as like a assistant director on a series, but even then the show would have to run for like 10 years. It's really hard to become a director. That was the advice I got. And I left very angry after that conversation, but then kind of enlightened because I realized that nobody can tell me how to do it. There's a million ways to do it, and nobody else's path is going to work for me. So I just have to figure out my own way. And that consisted of constantly working on something, like have something that I was working towards creatively, and then just being kind to everybody. Kindness goes a long way. When people enjoy working with you, they go into other rooms and they talk about it. And so I think a lot of the opportunities I've had so far is just because I've treated people with respect, particularly my key creatives. I respect them because they know more about their job than I do. And eventually something has to give. So I would say that would be my advice.
I'll attest to that. He's a really nice guy to work with on set. On the film we made together. So follow Nicholas on Instagram, eh?
Yes.
All of us here at Creative Third Thursdays wish you all the best, Nicholas.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Nicholas Humphries, everyone.
Thank you.
So Creative Third Thursdays is a Chilliwack Creative Commission event. Keep our eye on the hashtag Creative Chilliwack. There's cold drinks in the lobby still out there. Let's have one. Let's meet. Let's mingle.
Cool.
Take some selfies. Cheers, everyone.
Yay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.